What's up, folks? JV Wins is here. Dogon SS is here. We have returned to kick some more flavor in your ear, courtesy of another edition of the Conscious Approach channel on YouTube. Thanks to everybody out there who has been tuning in, hitting that subscribe button, leaving those comments, and hitting that like button on each of our videos. We certainly appreciate it. And as always, I like to say, we do not take for granted the value of your digital currency. As someone who does not make the effort to subscribe to 10% of the content that he runs across, I understand full well the value of making the effort to do that. It signifies that you find value in this content, enough value that you are willing to offer up your digital currency by subscribing to the channel. So, thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel thus far. And of course, thank you in advance to those who will do so in the future. It's JV Wins, Dogon SS. Once again, I also want to say you can now check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music for anyone who likes to get the audio version of what we do here. If you're not necessarily in position to check us out on YouTube, check us out on any of those platforms, just trying to be available in any and all places possible. So, yeah, man. Conscious Approach, this is how we like to do things. August the 5th, we hope everybody out there is having a great week. We have an interesting set of topics to kick around the campfire tonight. Going to be interesting to see what the community has to say about some of these subjects that we are talking about here. First thing that we are going to get into are interesting comments that were made by Wale in reference to the state of hip hop discourse. Wale, I don't know if Wale at this point qualifies as friend of the channel. I know we've talked about Wale before, but I don't know if we've done it enough to where he is an official friend of the channel. He might be on the fringe.
Yeah, French,
Yeah. So, fringe friend of the channel, Wale, recently offered up some thoughts about the state of hip hop discourse. We like to, occasionally talk about some interesting music topics, not necessarily about the music itself, but rather about the ecosystem around the music. And this particular time, Wale was offering up his thoughts on music discourse and his belief that it is oversaturated. And he compared it to other aspects of media to try to analogize how he feels about the fact that hip hop discourse has become oversaturated. So this says Wale thinks hip hop music discourse is oversaturated now. Wale recently sat down with Complex for a wide-ranging conversation about the state of hip-hop culture, his 15-year career, and a lot more. During the sit-down with Jordan Rose, he answered a question about how he feels engaging with music discourse today and how social media has changed it. So I'm going to skip through these quotes because I'm actually going to play a little snippet here from his interview. The article goes on to say, however, Wale's respect for streamers and other rap media was clear in the interview. Rather, he just wanted to make a point about the direction this type of general discourse is taking the art form in. The DMV artist thinks that all hip hop media should go into projects without expectations and especially without looking at other perspectives on them first. Meanwhile, with new music like fiery and loose freestyles coming out these days, plus a new album on the horizon, Wale has a lot to share in 2025. We can't wait to hear what's in store, and we'll see what other reflections and conversations this sparks when it comes to hip hop and discourse. So I might have to click out of this depending on if it opens up another tab, but let's find out first. Okay, cool. I don't have to click out of another tab. All right, so here is Wale talking about hip hop discourse being oversaturated.
They're so loud now. Like that, this, like it's like we're just in a room full of like a gazillion people screaming and a million album reviews, 15 minutes after albums out. A lot of hyperbole, man. Hyperbole is destroyed the irreparable damage to like discourse on anything, sports, football, basketball, like
for the sake of entertainment of it.
Yeah, and some people really only understand hyperbole. Like it's either a classic or it's the worst. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's cooked us a little bit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they've been dogging Kobe's legacy lately, like out of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like this that's the hyperbole thing. Like, man, he was just like what do you mean? What? Huh? Like, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
Right.
and they do it a lot more with music because it's subjective. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that might be one of my most frustrating things about music or art in general, but especially music, black music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, people will be like, "That's trash," just because they don't like the person who made it, or whatever, or they might, you know what I'm saying, or they at odds with some, you know what I'm
All right, there you go. So, shouts out for the Kobe reference. I appreciate that. And I also agreed with that.
Yeah, what the hell's
I,
going on
I
with
I
that?
agree with what is happening right now with Kobe talking the sports world. That's a video. That's a conversation for another video, I suppose. But yeah, so sports is a good reference point with which to make a comparison. Essentially, he said, there's no middle ground. Everything's either really good or everything is terrible. There's no nuance and there's no in between. And so he feels like the overabundance of voices in the space is contributing to the oversaturation. Of course, that is literally the textbook definition of oversaturation is when there's too much of it. And he says he didn't say this, but I'm inferring based upon his tone that he doesn't like it, that he doesn't think it's good, that there are so many chefs in the kitchen when it comes to how we talk about this stuff. So
Right.
what did you make of his comments?
I mean, yeah, it's true. Um, but also when Wale got in the game, uh, it was oversaturated then, relatively speaking. Um, when he got in, that was during the Dat Piff era, where it was all kinds of music being dropped all over the place. Blogs were already inflated and out of control, and doing exactly what he's saying right now. So now, granted, those were blogs. It wasn't all over. It wasn't an actual social media app, or hell, maybe not even YouTube yet. But there was a whole industry of hip hop heads, and I say that in air quotes, that are just dropping. That's how I used to learn about new music, new projects, new artists, was through those blogs. But it was a ton of blogs, and they were all doing this hyperbolic stuff that he's talking about. So he came in at a time where I already felt like there was an oversaturation going on in hip hop. Um, and I feel as though he benefited from the same thing that he's talking about right now. The thing is that over the years is, of course, grown, um, relatively speaking, gotten out of control, and now hell, everybody damn is on the internet rapping and stuff. So, and there's all kinds of people that are giving their own hip hop takes based on the hyperbolic way that everything's done nowadays. So it's not just in music and in sports. It's with movies. It's whatever, the TV series. If somebody has a take, most likely it's hot. So that's what's going on. What's happening? So I agree with him, but at the same time, old hip hop heads would have said the very same thing about Wale. You can ask them about Wale, and they'll be like, "Who the hell is that?" "Oh, that's the guy that made blah 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 blah." And then, huh? What? And they'll show them a picture, and they go, "Oh yeah, this guy." You know, he got hot when hip hop became trash. So the same thing could be said, in today's generation, and he would be, relatively speaking, a old head right now, compared to these young guys that are going. And yeah, man, the stuff is not really appealing, the overwhelming majority of it. But these young kids seem to love it, so let them have it. I say. I think that everybody, if they want to pick up a mic, let them go ahead and do it. And if that leads to what we're calling oversaturation, so be it. But the hot takes part of his argument, I do agree with that. I do feel as though that needs to go away, but it won't. So I think the best thing that anybody can do is just find the people that have reasonable takes, and there's people out there that do that as well. Not everybody's on these hype trains or whatever, whatever. So, point well taken, Wale. But I would just say that I was saying the same thing about him when he came out. So, but what are your thoughts on what Wale has to say about the oversaturation of hip hop? Saying that, well, it's too much going on right now, and there's too much. There's too many people living on extremes, whether it comes to music being trash or a classic. What are your thoughts, man?
He is right about that. Yeah, but yeah, entertainment discourse in general, and I'll lump sports into entertainment because it is. It's all become matters of extremism. Something is either great or it's trash. A player is either elite or he's bad. Um, I can't even fix my face to use the word elite in sports anymore because it's just been such an overused term. A quarterback is either, there's like 15, 20, 30 elite quarterbacks at any given time, which is so counterintuitive because elite has to be a small category.
Mm-hmm.
But the word gets thrown around so flippantly that if one is not classified as elite, then they must be garbage. So he's right in what he is saying. But I will also agree with you in saying, to a certain degree, he's benefited from this environment. And one of the things that I rail against when it comes to the way that he calls it hip hop discourse. So I'm just going to piggyback off of what he calls it. I
Mm-hmm.
tend to call it hip hop journalism, but I guess because like you can't really podcasts aren't really journalistic. So I guess, for lack of a better term, music discourse is probably a good default way to think about it. But one of the biggest issues that I have with hip hop discourse is there doesn't seem to be any critical way that we are actually looking at the music. Everything is either really, really good. My problem with it is that everything tends to get classified as really good. There's no such thing as bad. Therefore, it's difficult to really create a standard of what constitutes good and bad music because we're calling everything good. And, one of the issues with discourse that I have is because everyone is trying to gain favorability within the industry because you want to be able to rub elbows with the right people, there is a reticence on the part of a lot of people who have influential platforms to be critical because they're afraid of alienating people and ruining potential relationships and mutually beneficial business relationships,
Mm-hmm.
business partnerships. So I think what happens as a result of that is a reasonable critical lens with which to evaluate the music gets lost in the shuffle. And in turn, everything becomes good. And if it's not good, we just don't talk about it. Now, what Wale is talking about is everything is trash or is good. So he's talking about polar opposites and extremes. But I think that what I'm suggesting is two sides of the same coin, in which, in addition to the the dichotomy of trash and not trash, there's also the dichotomy of everything is classic or we make no mention of it. So I think both of those things are happening concurrently. And I think that there is enough voices on either side of that dynamic that are contributing to said oversaturation. So I think across the board there does need to be some more balance because as I've said before, everything can't be great. Everything is not a classic.
Mm-hmm.
And to Wale's point, not everything is trash either. There's a lot of stuff that's good, average, in the middle, acceptable, okay, great for what it's meant or intended to be. And then you do have things that are legitimately trash, and you do have things that are legitimately classic. But right now, there does seem to be this weird environment of a fear of being critical in lieu of alienating people who are soft and get into their feelings too much because a person would dare be critical of the stuff that they do. So we're going to just call everything that everyone does classic. And then for the people who are on the other side of the aisle who don't necessarily care about that, it seems as though they're in a rush to call everything trash and say that nothing's good. And I do think that the truth is somewhere in the middle when it comes to that, in my opinion. And this is coming from someone who personally is not a fan of current hip hop music, I do think that most of it is not very good in terms of quality. But of course, I'm juxtaposing that to the to what my perception of quality is based upon what I grew up listening to. Tell that to somebody who's 18, 19, 20, 25, listening to what they're listening to today, they'll swear up and down that quality today is top notch. And I guess that's just a generational thing, and we'll have to agree to disagree. But in terms of the oversaturation of the discourse, he does have a point. I do agree, but I also, like you, believe that he benefited from that because I do think that there were times at points during his come up when someone would have labeled something that he did as great or classic or excellent or very good, when in actuality it may have just been okay. But of
Exactly.
course, once again, me speaking on a very subjective issue, which is the interpretation of art and music. Maybe that's just my opinion, but I don't think that everything Wale was doing during his come up was great or excellent or classic or very good or whatever adjective you want to put in there to explain what was happening with respect to this particular dynamic that benefited him. So it goes both ways. It can work for you and it can work against you. And maybe now that he is 30 plus and he's probably seen as an old head in the game and he is in the process of unfortunately being aged out because hip hop is the most ageist form of music that there is in existence. They're quick to throw you out once you hit a certain age. He's probably seeing the writing on the wall and unmuting about this because now that he is over the hill, so to speak, it's starting to work against him. Whereas 10 years prior, the very same thing was working in his favor. So, um, you know, maybe he needs to learn how to get his Nas on and learn how to age gracefully. But if he can't figure that out, he'll continue to be victimized, quote unquote, by said oversaturation.
Well, that's what he needs to do. That what you just said is just make age appropriate music. And somebody that is actually a Wale fan or just because they're out there. And they'll tell me that he's always been making age appropriate music or always talking about. Hell, I wouldn't know, man. To be honest, because every time that I hear Wale, he's not making music that I think correlates to the image that he gives off. And so he gives off this image as somebody that's supposed to be, you know, uh, socially aware about what's going on with the people. This take that he gave seemed socially aware, in depth, and stuff like that. So I anticipate bars like that. But whenever I do hear Wale verse or whatever, he'll say stuff here and there, but it's not it's not good. So he's been a victim of a lot of this trash talk, which is probably why he doesn't like that. Because let's be honest, he doesn't meet the bar for classic. See, this is a personal take. He's not talking about the landscape of hip hop. He's talking about his own personal experience while going through this. It's oversaturated because, he's sitting here. I don't know if he's still on a major label, but he did all the politicking and brown nosing in order to be a part of MMG, which, in hindsight, well, it never made sense at the beginning. Like, what is he doing with Rick Ross? What the hell is that about?
It did seem like an odd match.
It
Yeah.
was but at that point, Wale was just trying to do anything to be in the game. So Wale did whatever it took, and he was putting out music. It was getting a lot of steam as far as the industry is concerned, but, but they realized that all of this work that they were putting into making him seem like whatever, it didn't really pan out. The people that end up liking his music was a niche kind of thing. Not everybody was digging Wale music. I wanted to so bad. Back in the days when I was actually acquiring mixtapes and albums and stuff like that, I had my own mini discography of Wale, searching, trying to find something that I can actually listen to. So there's some people that I was a fan of as a person, and I was like, hey man, I'll give your music a try. And I was a fan of Wale the person. But then once I started hearing, these verses where he's saying a lot of stuff that I felt like went against his own personal moral code, I just gave up. you know, I kind of figured that would happen as much him joining MMG, so he's gonna give a lot of no hands types verses. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, all right, whatever. But as long as you balance it out, and I didn't feel like I was getting that balance from Wale. And at some point, I just felt as though he was just some industry guy. And so this take, to me, in my opinion, is no, he doesn't put out classic, types material. So he's gonna fall on the sword of it's trash, which honestly is debatable. It probably really is trash. So the only reason why I'm bagging on him like this is because I feel as though this guy didn't stand on 10 toes when it came to him being true to himself. It feels as though he really went to the industry direction, got chewed up and spit out, and now is crying foul. A decade later, saying that the industry is oversaturated and blase please, blase blase. Nah, bro, just make good music.
Mhm.
And if you make good music, people gonna find you and hold you up and respect you. But if you're not making good music because you're trying to make music that people are doing now or whatever, yeah, bro, you're gonna get caught up in the wash. And I'm not gonna sit here and feel sorry for him or anybody else that's in that boat, not being true to themselves. Hell, I had some music on uh, YouTube Music. I'm sitting here listening. It was somebody I recently saved, but it was like some New York type rap or whatever. So I was just listening to random stuff, and I mentioned him a couple weeks ago or whatever. But Ransom, and I'm sitting here listening to this song. I don't know who this is. I thought it was Benny the Butcher, but the bars were too clean. No knock on Benny the Butcher, but the bars were too clean. It was grown man stuff. Benny, he'll say some grown man stuff and then get into coke rap. But this guy was, every bar was grown man stuff. And I was like, what the hell is this? And I listened, I was like, oh yeah, Ransom, of course. And then so now there's people that are listening to that. So Wale's 40, man. Make age appropriate music. And then people will call that a classic. And they won't call it trash. But be true to yourself, bro. But I feel as though he always struggled with that in his career. So I can't buy this.
Yeah, I don't know him, but I do hear what you're saying. I've always characterized him as an identity crisis rapper.
Mm-hmm.
That's always what I called him. Him and J. Cole, I've always called the both of them identity crisis rappers. Remember when, I don't know if you saw this, we never talked about it here, but a while back, LeBron, a lot of people, LeBron, in his typical narcissistic ways, says something on purpose so that people can be talking about him. And it was on his own show, and he said they got into the conversation around championships. Did you see this? And so
Yeah.
he got into and so he basically said, we've made championships, we weight them too much in sports.
Yes.
Why do we talk about championships so much? Championships this, and it shouldn't be the end all to be all,
Yes.
just because this guy has this many and this guy. And what basically, and I agree, I don't remember who I was watching saying this, but I agree 100%. What LeBron was doing in that moment was he was projecting
Yeah.
how he feels about the way people talk about him.
Right.
And he was using the entire landscape of the way we do championship talk as the way to do it.
Correct.
Really, what LeBron was doing in that moment was saying, I don't like the fact that people hold it against me that I don't have more championships than Jordan.
Yes.
That's what he was doing.
Mhm.
Without saying it directly, what he was really talking about himself, and he was really saying the way that y'all, I don't like the way we do this championship thing because I feel like I should be viewed as greater than Mike, but I'm not because of the 6 championships versus the 4, and they do championships and they weight championships too much. So even though he was coding it around the entire landscape of sports and the weight of championships, with the discussion, really what he was doing was talking about himself. And I only bring that up to say I agree with you from the standpoint that I do believe that Wale's feelings of hip hop being oversaturated in terms of its discourse, he's really projecting how hip hop discourse talks about him.
Yeah.
And so his perception of its oversaturation is, in my opinion, due to his level of dissatisfaction with how his music and his work is talked about.
Yeah.
and how he feels he's appreciated or lack thereof. And to a certain extent, I believe some of that does have to do with his up and downness in terms of a lot of the subject matter inherent in his music. At least for me, me personally, I tend to be a bottom line guy. I kind of feel like, if you claim to be about certain things in terms of how you see the world, it should be reflected in your music. And if you are, um, you know, hypocritical in terms of what you put through in your music versus what you talk about publicly, there's a cognitive dissonance that I can't get over. And so I
Correct.
can't really rock with you in terms of how I listen to your music. It's,
Exactly.
it's why I can't be a fan of Meek Mill, because you can't do too good to be true with Rick Ross, but then go to a Revolt conference talking about how the music industry profits off of ignorance. It's
Right.
like, okay, well, which is it? Like,
Hmm.
are you a part of making ignorant music, or are you aware enough to know that the music industry profits off of it? Therefore, you're not going to make it anymore.
Right.
And anybody who's a part of hip hop discourse pointing that out, saying that that's trash to do that, for example, I don't believe that that's evidence of oversaturation. I think that's evidence of a certain level of critical thinking that happens to work to your detriment. And of course, you don't like it, so you're going to unmute about it.
Hmm.
And so, when it comes to Wale, I kind of feel like, to a certain extent, he's done himself a bit of a disservice with this topsy turvy approach to, being someone who is consciously socially aware, which I do believe him to be, but then also doing some of the surface level low hanging fruit in his music. And I don't think it's a coincidence that throughout his association with MMG,
Hmm.
you largely heard him on songs either talking about women or some of the more introspective songs. So you'd hear him on stuff like Poor Decisions with Rick Ross and Lupe Fiasco,
Hmm.
or there was another song on the vault. I think it was the second volume of MMG. Uh, I think it was called Fluorescent Ink, I think is the name of the song. So you'll hear him on songs like that, or you'll hear him on songs talking about women. But when it came to the street stuff, Wale was inconspicuously absent. And I don't think that that's by mistake. I think it's because even they knew the timeline that he was on. But I
Hmm.
kind of feel like if you're on that timeline, maybe go a different route other than MMG. But
Right.
those are the kinds of decisions that you make when you're trying to be on in the industry, to your point. And I think what comes along with that is the potential for the discourse to reflect an inability to accurately understand where to place you. And so, from that standpoint, maybe he just doesn't appreciate the fact that he has not necessarily been able to garner the appropriate level of respect that he believes that he deserves. And so, he is going to pinpoint an oversaturation of the discourse as the reason for why that happens. But I don't hear other artists talking like that who are properly or accurately rated or appreciated, because
Exactly.
they've been where they're supposed to be the entire time.
Exactly.
Like, I don't necessarily hear Nas talking about hip hop discourse being oversaturated,
No.
because people know where to rate him.
Hmm.
And even people I don't like Drake, for example. I don't like Drake, but Drake knows who he is, and he's going to make the same stuff that he makes. And so he's not going to complain about hip hop discourse being oversaturated, because from now until the end of time, whenever Drake makes his lady talk or his fake tough guy talk, people are going to know how to properly rate him, because he's been that way for his entire career. So, I think his point in principle, speaking on Wale, is correct. But I also think that his, you know, disillusionment with, the state of the discourse overall is a direct reflection of his individual place within where he stands with it.
Yeah, man. And that's what and I agree. And that's why I said, I lumped him in the category of oversaturation. I throw him in a barrel with all the other guys. He doesn't get an exemption from me because of this persona that he has. I listen to his music. I must not listen to it enough. Some may say, or, oh, he's got songs where he's really talking about some stuff. I mean, I doubt it. I mean, I've heard how he talks about women to know that I don't want to hear your album. Well, you going so now so the songs that you decided to feature on where you're talking about women in these crazy fashions. And so now you're gonna want to get on your album and hold them up and stuff. Like, I don't want to hear that. Which one is it?
That is what he does. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to
Yeah.
hear that. That's why I'm not checking for your album, because what you're doing on these singles, it's a fine line. If he's trying to play the line of I'm trying to sound just like every other rapper, use the vernacular that all these other rappers use in order to infiltrate and inception them into liking me so I can give them what I really want on my actual albums, that's a fine line. And not everybody can do it. And the way that he did it, in my opinion, is not how you do it, because you turn people like me off. The only person that I know that has done this at an extremely high level is Kendrick. He is the only person that can talk low key reckless on some songs and stuff, but at the same time, you know exactly where he's coming from and whatever. And that is he totes that line very well. And so, especially with his this beef situation that he had with Drake and his last album, where he's got bangers, and he's still saying stuff. So not everybody's been able to achieve that. And so if Wale was trying to, try to pull one like, hey y'all, I can, I'm a chameleon. I can do this over here with these guys, but I can still talk about some stuff. I don't want to hear that. Because at this point I feel like you're playing me. So yeah, man, just make good music. And then people are going to find you and then rate you appropriately. But right now, if Wale is more of a meme of a rapper than an actual rapper. See, now there's people that I would say like Ransom, and that is a rapper's rapper. You say Wale is not a rapper's rapper. He's not. He doesn't fit in that category. Now, hot take, right? Hyperbole. He isn't, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So if I say, hey man, who's in your deck or whatever, if I'm talking to a person that I know that got bars, I'd be surprised if he listens to Wale. But if I talk to somebody that's got bars, you know what I'm saying, and I say who do you listen to? And they listen to Conway or they listen to Rock Marciano or somebody like that, then it's like, yeah, those guys are rappers. Of course, Raekwon or somebody like that. Yeah, those guys are Ghostface. Wale, this guy tried to play the game too much. And therefore, in my opinion, played himself. So now somebody that's 40 years old talking about it, like you said, like his music isn't getting enough attention or whatever, and he feels it's because there's so many rappers out. No, it's because you weren't being yourself all these years. That's what
he feels like the discourse is too much. There's too many people who comment on it. That's how he feels.
Well,
but again, I don't know that he would be even saying that if said discourse was being positive towards him.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, it's the LeBron effect where really he's talking about himself.
Yeah, sorry, Wale. Look, I didn't mean to turn this into a Wale bashing session, but this guy, to me, I feel as though the thing that I have is I feel as though he dropped the ball. And I told you that I was a fan of him, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, the whole Black Hippies little thing that they had going. Like I was real fond of all of that stuff when all of those guys were getting started. And I felt like Wale went left. So I was like, hey man, whatever. And so therefore my empathy with him went left. So hey man, just stay 10 toes and stand on what you about and make good music. So
yeah, I mean,
all that said, I'll still try to, if he came out with something recently, I'll try to listen to it to see if he's come around. But I highly doubt it. What you was gonna say?
No, I was gonna say that you'll never go wrong with just making what you want to make.
Yeah, man.
Just make what you want to make. There's a lot of these, like I said, most of this stuff I don't like, and most of these artists I don't care for. But one thing about it is, like it or love it, they're making what they want to make. The ones who aren't doing there's no coincidence that the artists who do the least amount of the complaining are the ones who are making what they want to make. As bad as it is or whatever, they're not really too snuffed over the way that their stuff is talked about because they're going to be accurately rated. Like, look, Sexy Red makes the, in my opinion, like Sexy Red is doing what she wants to do, and she has plenty of detractors. She has
Mhm.
plenty of detractors, but I don't know that when Sexy Red is sitting down talking to her, team, that she's
Sure.
complaining about the way people talk about her stuff. Like, I mean, she's rated where she ought to be given what she makes, and she takes it or leaves it because she's doing what she wants to do. Versus having somebody like Wale or Benzino's daughter, what's her name? Um,
Got her name.
uh, uh, Coi Leray, who seems to every other month complain about the music industry, and talk about how she'd be making music like Lauryn Hill if that's what people wanted to hear. No, maybe you just don't want to make that.
Right.
Because if that's who you want to be, you'd be making that and people would accept it for what it is. So
Exactly.
you need to figure out your identity crisis and make the kind of music that you want to make.
Exactly.
And then maybe you won't be so impacted by said oversaturation of hip hop discourse.
Well said.
But the principle behind those comments is correct
It
because
is.
there are a lot of chefs in the kitchen.
There
But
are.
at the same time, it's just very convenient that when people talk like that, it's typically because that ecosystem isn't necessarily in that moment in time benefiting them. And so that's when they'll unmute to talk about it.
Because it is benefiting some people.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
they're not the ones complaining.
Exactly.
So hey man, it is what it is, man. Wale, good luck, bro. Hope you get it figured out. Um, I'll be I'll sample, whatever whenever he drops his next thing, I always try to listen to it at least one time. Whether I make it all the way through is another subject, but I always try. I always try.
Ah, mm-mm-mm.